So any minute.
Oh, in a few minutes? Okay.
Yeah, any minute.
All right, well, how about start? That'd be great.
Okay, great.
So I will just, normally I give a long, detailed introduction. And my long, involved introduction is, here's the, so.
Okay, great. Well, hi, everyone. My name is LaRocco, and I'm the author of Opportunity Knocking, and I'm also the senior talent producer over at CNBC. I'm one of the producers of Squawk Box, and I've been there for 14 years. And prior to that, I was in local news, lived all around the country, including Hastings, Nebraska. So a little Midwest there for 10 years. So I'm really fortunate where I've gotten to know the most successful individuals in the world, and also just regular folks like you and me, as I like to say. And one day I was actually speaking down in Florida. I was speaking to about 500 small businessmen. And like anybody who's been in Florida during the winter time, you know that 9 times out of 10 you get snowed in. So I was sitting on the floor with hundreds of other people in the airport, kind of just like reviewing the day. I always like to do that. And it dawned on me, like, all the questions that people ask me are identical. It's like the how and why and the strategies that people employ. So I thought to myself, you know, that's a really interesting topic, because it's true. Like, we all want to be successful, right? So how do we do it? And it dawned on me that it doesn't matter what industry you're in. You're the owner of the corner deli, you're a broker, you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, or even if you're like a stay-at-home mom. The strategies that you use are all the same. It's just different in how that we internalize them. So what I did was, since I'm a TV producer, I'm extremely visual. So I created what's called the Opportunity Pyramid. And there are 7 layers in the pyramid that all depend on each other. And I just figured it's a nice way to kind of lead the reader into the 7 strategies for you to obtain what I like to call world domination. Now, world domination is definitely a hefty description, but bottom line is we all want to be successful. And if you are building a company or you're building your brand, what better, like, do you want to pass the baton off to somebody else so they can become further successful based on your hard work? And chances are you don't want that. You're not going to want to pass that baton off. You're going to want to continue to build and be number one. So I'm going to lead you briefly through the 7 layers of the Opportunity Pyramid, and then also kind of tying it back together as to how this creates a really good corporate culture and a really good environment for companies, no matter what the size. So the first layer of the Opportunity Pyramid is knowing yourself. You need to know your strengths and weaknesses in order to be successful. I mean, how can you seize on an opportunity if you don't know what you're good at or what you're not good at, more importantly? And if you want to be successful, you want to seize on your abilities. You want to further fine-tune your skills. You want to use your strengths. But also at the same time, you have to recognize your weaknesses so you can work on them. The second layer is building your knowledge. Now, in this level of the Opportunity Pyramid, I focused on Harold Hamm. He is America's richest oil man, and he's also a billionaire with a high school education. He never went to college. And Harold was one of 13 children. His parents were sharecroppers. He only went to school during the winter time because he was a farmhand. He couldn't go to school during the fall and spring and summer. Couldn't. At the age of 8 years old, he went to work to help put food on the table with his other 12 brothers and sisters. And one time he came across an individual who worked in the oil industry. And the person left such a mark on him that he decided, you know what, this is what I want to do. Like, he found his calling. But here he is. He goes to school, what, 3 months out of the year? How can somebody with that type of educational background, right, get into the oil industry? Well, he started from the ground floor up. He worked his nails to the bone. He would learn hands-on knowledge right there. He would pick the brains of people on the ground. And that's how he slowly learned the industry itself. When the opportunity arose, he bought 2 oil trucks and he delivered oil in his little town of Enid, Oklahoma. And he saved. And he wanted to create a company that other people would want to work for. And he said, well, how do I do that? Well, I want to create a company that I would want to work for. So he created this culture based on the values that he internalized, so he could have employees and employees that would stay. Eventually, Harold built on his knowledge, not only from actually doing it, he actually took selective college courses in geology to enhance and take his company to the next level. So I wanted to hit home on that level of the pyramid about Harold Tam to kind of show you, you don't need a Harvard MBA in order to be successful. Real world knowledge is just as important as book knowledge. And I can just tell you from personal experience, because of what I do at CNBC, I have met many brilliant scholars, but that's all they are. To be successful, to be a leader, it's within. It's your personality, it's your drive, it's your energy. It's what you bring to the table. And while you may be smart, if you don't have that kavorka, if you don't have that ability to transcend and to make that connection, it doesn't matter. Now, the next layer, after building your knowledge, I have defining your opportunity strategy and sticking with it. And as you can see, like all the layers, and as we go back, they all build upon each other. You need the first layer of the pyramid to go to the next pyramid. So once you know who you are, once you have that knowledge, you have to be able to define your opportunity strategy and then stick with it. It's the details, the devil's in the details. Every good leader is able to anticipate opportunity, as well as you have to anticipate failure and possible crises. For example, Mike Jackson of AutoNation, he had a plan 7 years prior to the financial crisis if the auto industry crashed. People thought he was nuts that he had such a plan. He was like, no, he's like, I have to have contingencies in place. What happens if something happens to the overall economy and it goes down like that and the consumer goes? Well, that's why AutoNation actually did very well during the financial crisis, because they had a plan in place. Your next level is stoking your inner passion. Stoking your inner passion it's extremely important, because as we all know, you have highs and lows in your career, in personal life, and it's your passion and the belief in yourself and of what you're doing that gets you through those difficult times. And it also rallies the troops, and it also enables to create that positive culture within the organization. Because you don't want to beat down your employees, you want to beat down your colleague, because let's face it, you don't want to be beaten down. You want to treat others with respect. You want to have that rallying cry, that unity, in order to rise above. So in this chapter, I actually focused on Steve Case, because Steve has risen and has fallen twice. The big one we all know is AOL Time Warner, of course. And then the first time there was GameLine. GameLine was the precursor to AOL. And he quit his Fortune 500 job to start this social media company way back when. And at his first board meeting, he realized that the company was going under. Can you imagine leaving your solid job, going to your first meeting, then realizing, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to start looking for a new gig. His boxes weren't even unpacked yet. So he actually rallied together, and he found other colleagues that shared the same values as him, that same passion, and they created America Online. So it shows you that out of failure, success can be born. And then even after, of course, we all know what happened with AOL and Time Warner. He had to start over again, and he created Revolution. And now he invests in a lot of upcoming rising companies like Wally Wally Doodle. They've done Zipcar in the past, and now he says your failures are just as important as your successes, because you have to learn. Life is a learning experience, and what you get and what you recognize and what you internalize helps you within getting to know yourself, getting to know your strengths and weaknesses, and it all builds up. The next piece is staying the course. And of course, by staying the course, you need that passion, you need the knowledge, you need to know who you are. You have to be able to set your sights on that, and no matter what is going on around you, acknowledge the crises, acknowledge the challenges, but keep your eye on the prize. And when it comes to staying the course, I focus on Ron Kruszewski from Stiefel Nicholas. And when Ron first came over to Stiefel, his wife said, "Ron, whatever you do, honey, in the first board meeting, please don't talk." Because he tends to jab a little bit. And he's like, okay, he's like, I'm gonna use my listening skills, as my 8-year-old says. So he was sitting in his first board meeting, and he's trying to, he's the new guy on the block, and yet, as we all know, he's the CEO. So a lot of people really don't want to tell him what they think because they don't want to get fired. So it's kind of interesting when you are a CEO, because you want to have that confidant, you want to get real feedback, but people are afraid to actually give it to you because you're their boss. So he realized with the culture of Stiefel when he first got there, they were a mishmash. And there was not as much direction. And there were a lot of problems. That entire meeting, people were like, this doesn't work, that doesn't work, we need this fixed, we need to do this. And it was a meeting upon meeting of problems. So he sat there the first day, went to all the meetings, made the mental notes. The next day he came in and he went around the room and said, okay, you fix this thing in IT, you do this, and we'll have another meeting the next time we have problems. That was about 10 years ago. He realized that within the organization, you had to create this accountability and this teamwork, which they didn't have. It was all about, well, I'm just telling you what this problem is and that's it. So for them to stay the course, he had to literally build it all the way back up. What is Stiefel? What are we doing? What are our objectives? How are we going to get there? And based on all of that, he said, they created this culture where it was this teamwork mentality. They all had to buy in, a successful culture for a company is every individual in that organization has to be part of that team. And every CEO that I've ever worked with, be it Alan Mulally of Ford, Ron Kruszewski, David Rubenstein of Carlisle, they have all told me that they have lost good people on paper, great resume, nice person, but they didn't fit. So either they leave because they're not part of the greater picture, or they have to let them go. But in the end, it's better for them and for the organization because they're not happy. We're gonna work the majority of our lives. We should be happy doing it, right? Why not? It's a simple thing. And good employers, good leaders, they love what they do. They've got that passion. And when you make that hire or you're with your colleagues, you want to surround yourself with people that have that passion. Of course, they're not going to have the same strengths and weaknesses as yourself, because as a team, as we all know, everyone has to have different strengths and weaknesses to complement each other. But with that piece, staying the course, it's so vital in terms of making sure that everybody in the organization has their own pyramid, because that way they can work together so you can have your execution. And that's where the fine details are. In that level of the pyramid, I actually focus solely on David Rubenstein of the Carlisle Group. And David is, I don't know if anybody knows him here, but he's brilliant, has a really funny, dry sense of humor. Anytime he comes on Squawk Box, he always has these deadpan jokes, and it's great because sometimes people get them and sometimes they don't. And he'll even poke fun of himself. Before the Beats deal, we had him on when he made the Beats investment, and he actually put a pair on. So we're like, what kind of music do we have on here? Classical music? And he's just a brilliant guy. And the way that they've created Carlisle, particularly why I wanted to focus with them on the execution side, is the culture in terms of they have this one Carlisle culture where if you go to his offices in DC, London, or even Tokyo, the posters on the walls, the tchotchkes on their desks, they're all identical. Everything is exactly the same. They have been able to successfully create a culture where no matter where you are in the world, the values, the way that they go about it, the interaction amongst the staff, and with each other from the different offices are the same. It's seamless. That's why they do so well when it comes to various acquisitions around the world. Their China office can easily work with their German office. And we all know that around the world there are cultural differences. They recognize them, but they have this greater good. They all come together in terms of what Carlisle stands for, what kind of investments they make, and how the strategies that they use are exactly the same. And what they do is that once a year, they actually honor one employee around the world with the One Carlisle Award. And it's like the most prestigious honor for an employee. So it's little things like that that actually help foster and create the building blocks, if you will, so that way you can execute. And every week in their weekly emails, they talk about their latest investment deals and how the One Carlisle culture has played into that investment. Now finally, we've got my favorite, world domination. And, and I focus on 3 women who formed Blogger. Now I don't know if any of you blog here, but the blogging sphere, back when it first started, had a very seedy past. It was more of like these fly-by-night journalist people that would just kind of write not so nice things, and it really wasn't journalistically sound. But these 3 women from Blogger all had very good jobs. One was this, Lisa Stone worked at CNN. She was a correspondent. Jory Desjardins worked in publishing. And then Lisa Campbell-Page worked in Silicon Valley. And all 3 of these women, while they were very good at what they did, they weren't happy. Lisa Campbell-Page told me that during the dot-com bubble, when everyone was getting their pink slips in Silicon Valley, she got upset because she didn't get one. All these people in her office were getting pink slips, and she went home fuming. She was like, I don't want to work here anymore. She's, and then she realized herself, what's wrong with me? Like, all these people are losing their jobs in tech. We all knew how uncertain it was back then. Like, I really don't want to work here anymore. This is a really bad sign. So she went into her office and she went to her boss and said, can you please lay me off? And the boss was like, no, we like you. She's like, but I don't want to work here anymore. So they said, okay, why don't we make you a consultant? So it dawned on her, like, well, what makes me happy? So she made a list. And I'm a huge list maker. I don't know if you guys are, but I love seeing things on paper. I write things down. It just helps me focus. And it dawned on her that she loves to write. So she started doing these little blogs, and she wrote a little blog review on a little Greek restaurant in town. And she loved it there. And she says getting Greek food in San Francisco is very hard. I don't know, I've been to San Francisco once, but I'll take her word for it. And she went one day, and all of a sudden she sees about 20 of her former colleagues eating at this restaurant. And she's like, well, why are you here? I said, well, we read your blog, and it sounded really good, so we wanted to come. And that was her aha moment. She was like, wait a minute. I love what I'm doing here, and I'm actually making a difference. People are actually listening to me. This is kind of cool. So she created her blog, and then she started to go to these blogging conferences. And blogging conferences, you don't talk. You literally sit next to each other on your computer, and you just type. I'm going to talk to you by typing to you. Very not personal at all. So one day, Lisa was sitting in across the room at this blogging conference. She met eyes with Jory. And they struck up a little friendship, and they were like, hey, listen, it's kind of funny. We're not talking to each other. What can we do about it? And they created Blogger, which is a company that creates conferences, let alone a platform for female bloggers now to get their message out. And what they found was, what the secret to the sauce was, Fortune 100 companies, Procter & Gamble, J&J, they go to these conferences because in order to get new products out, they want to go to the mommy bloggers. In today's social media, you get instantaneous feedback, good and bad. And they actually pay ads on these blog sites to capture consumers, to get buzz out on their products. I went to one of their conferences 2 years ago, and It was like, I don't know if you guys have ever been to the Home Depot conference in Las Vegas. It was hundreds of thousands of square feet of product. Every corporation was there, you know, hey, listen, this is our new product here. Why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? So they created something out of nothing. And now they have paid out over, I think, $12 million over the course of 2 years to bloggers, for them to write the written word. And for 3 years, when they created Blocker, the 3 founders, they didn't take a salary. They put all their money into their company because they believed in it so much. They had to pay their employees. And everybody that they hired were like them. They were bloggers, and they would go to saying, listen, what kind of service are we going to provide? They call their clients and their customers a community. And that's a big word. I mean, they talk about their community. That's their business. Those are their clients. And when you say community, it kind of gives you more of that personal touch, where we're all in this together. And that way they don't lose touch with what they're trying to do. I think sometimes, all too often, when you reach world domination or you're right at that cusp, that's when the arrogance starts coming in, that clouds your judgment. You want to still kind of keep grounded. And I think with them using the word community and them getting out there and also constantly evolving themselves, because as we all know, you need to evolve in order to succeed. I mean, look what happened with Microsoft. They now have to start evolving again. So when it comes to world domination, like Jory said, why am I going to hand off the baton to somebody else after all my years and sacrifices? Why am I going to do that? She's like, I want to be the end all be all. If I'm going to be number one, I will continue to be number one. And then it's throughout the whole process. It's always going back. Who are you? How are we going to build our knowledge? How are we going to stay relevant? Just because you reach world domination doesn't mean you're going to stay there. With innovation and with technology nowadays, you could be a thing of the past in a blink of an eye. So with all this, it's just a constant evolution process, and when you put it all together, it ties to what I would like to say, which is like the culture of a successful company. And one in particular that I want to hit home on is Ford. And Alan Mulally of Ford, when he first took over the company, we know how bad it was. It was nothing. I'm gonna show up a quick slide for you guys so you can see it. The key is one, right? One team, people working together as a lean global enterprise for automotive leadership, all right? And that goes all the way down. Because remember, an auto company is not just making product, right? It's also about going to the consumer, making sure that the production line is good. There are a lot of people in this food chain of Ford. And that with the plan, you have to aggressively restructure to operate profitably, which means you have to be nimble, because we all know with the economy, sometimes you have to make, certain cars for certain demographics. And then you want to finance your plan and improve your balance sheet and work collectively as a team. There is just one overarching goal, and that's to make the best product possible, not just cheaply, but to make the best product. And all of this came from an epiphany for Alan Mulally of Ford, which was a 1927 ad that Henry Ford wrote opening the highways to all mankind. That's a very simple statement, but it's a very hard to execute. Because if you want to open the highways to all mankind, that means every stratosphere in terms of salary. But at the same time, you have to make sure that the quality is still there. Because you and I both want to buy a car that's reliable and safe and that you like it. Now, when you talk about this, about the one team, it just kind of goes hand in hand with the culture, and that's about who we are as people. So Alan wanted to focus on the behaviors, like foster functional and technical excellence. You know and have a passion for the business and for the consumers. You really have to love what you do. It all goes back to loving what you do and making sure that what you're doing is contributing to the overarching greater good of what Ford was trying to do, which was opening the highways to all mankind. And then you have to work together. And you have to have a skilled workforce, but you have to motivate them. And that comes from the C-suite. Who wants to work for a jerk? Who wants to work for like a lazy boss that just tells you what to do? Nobody. If you're a leader, if you're a CEO, you have to lead by example. You know, actions speak louder than words. Instead of just saying like, you know, hey Bob, good job, pat on the back, show the appreciation, show the motivation. And that all comes within the culture. And then, you know, you've got the role model for the values. Show initiative, courage, integrity. Improve the quality and the safety and sustainability of the product, of course, that's what he's talking there. And then also, this is the big thing here, and I touched on it, enjoy the journey and each other. Have fun, never at others' expense. It's this, you have to respect one another. If you don't respect your boss, are you going to work hard for him? No, probably not. If you don't respect your colleagues, that's where the infighting comes, the back talking, the whispering. That's a cancer culture. You don't want that. This is why, like, when you see Alan, like, and he's always smiling on TV, that's him. I swear, that is him 24/7. That's him even behind the scenes. He truly loves what he does. When you talk to him on the phone, you hear the smile in his voice. That's what you want. That's what you want to exude. And then finally, all of this, it delivers the results. Deal positively with our business realities, meaning, like, you know, let's realize, listen, if it's bad right now, if it's a bad market for cars or whatever, acknowledge it. Don't put the blinders on, face it head on. Then you have to develop the compelling and comprehensive plan, the vision. He is all about vision. And you want to set the high expectations, and you want to inspire others by what you are doing. And then finally, you have to hold yourself and others responsible and accountable to delivering the results. And their, of course, result is satisfying the customer. So with all of this is pretty much what the whole opportunity pyramid is all about. It's about knowing who you are, knowing your strengths, liking yourself. You have to like yourself, not to be like conceited, be like, I'm the best ever. But you really truly have to be comfortable in your own skin, knowing what you're good at, knowing what you need to work on, surrounding yourself with that team where you complement each other, and having that vision, that comprehensive plan in order to achieve world domination. Your definition of world domination is going to be different than mine. Bottom line is, we want ourselves, we want our companies to be the best that they can be. And it all comes back to the human capital. So that's pretty much it. That's
all right. You open for questions?
I am. So
okay.
Yes.
You know, your work with Ford. Any insights on what's going on at GM? I mean, it seems every other day there's more bad news.
It's. I mean, I don't have a lot of insight just from what Philip was talking about and things like that, but it's a mess. I mean, it really is. I'd be curious to see, like, heaven forbid, if that was really what Alan would do. It just seems like they're chasing their tail. We've heard that there are actually 75 more accidents out there that have not been reported on. I just think it's hard when companies are in crisis. They do one or two things. Either they go head on, which is what you should do, acknowledge it, get it out there, try to get proactive, or what I think GM is doing right now is like this drips and drabs. I mean, it is just god awful. I mean, if I was a GM shareholder right now, I would not be happy, because it feels like they're holding back on things. And then, last week when they had their study come out saying that they did everything right, come on, do you really think they're going to find something wrong that they did? We were all joking at CNBC, like, oh wow, they found nothing wrong. Sometimes I think that companies are too afraid to acknowledge that they did something wrong. But we're all human. And I think they got to get the mess out. I mean, we all know that the part number should have been changed instead of keeping it. But, even like Philip was saying that, how many weeks ago? I just think that the way that they're going about it from a PR standpoint is all wrong. I think that, from a CEO standpoint, I think that she should actually, I think that the CEO, she should actually sit down, like with a Phil LeBeau, and do like a real interview, not like this crap that when you go to Congress. I mean, nowadays, when you're a CEO, you've got a bullet on your head anyway, and, you know, Congress wants to drag you in anyway because you're the 1%. So they're gonna wanna make you, they wanna set an example of you. I just think that, you know, GM, they just have to be a little bit more proactive in terms of how to fix the mess.
So I like your sort of framework, but there's one thing that I kind of struggle with.
Sure.
In some of your examples, and I think this is actually very representative, that entrepreneurs and successful leaders are they discover opportunities serendipitously. It's somewhat accidental in some ways, but there is, you know, more than that.
Yeah.
And then I think this seems very nice sort of structure. And you know, it's anything but sort of, so how do you sort of reconcile the structured approach to be creative or serendipitous and be open to opportunities, like in case of Blogger?
Like in case of Blocker?
Yeah, things like
Well,
that.
for them, it was like the self-awareness. I think like it goes all the way back to the very first level of the pyramid, which is knowing yourself. And be it Carlisle Group or like Steve Case or Blockers, they know what they're good at, they know what they like, they know what their strengths and weaknesses are. So you have to, like all these good leaders, they're very high in terms of self-awareness. So they kind of gravitate and they kind of build something, or they look for opportunity based on what they can do. Because, you know, it doesn't matter if you work in private equity, like Ralph Sachs's in the book and so's David. Both are private equity titans, but they have very different areas of expertise where they invest. But that also goes back to what they're good at. What are their expertise? Because if you are even in fine dining, if you're a restaurateur, you know you've got a competition down the street, but what makes you special? So I think that helps you in terms of having to define opportunity by seeing something coming your way, or you stumble upon something like that. Because not every opportunity is an opportunity for you or the person sitting next to you. It depends on your skill set.
Along with that, how do you, so there are some, obviously people, and everyone's different, right? Some are leaders, some
Exactly.
aren't, some might be a little more quiet than others, but how do you take this as a team approach? Or how can you use it in a team approach?
It's definitely teamwork available, like you can use it that way. At each level of the pyramid, I actually break it down where if you're a manager or a business owner, how to use this level of the pyramid. If you work for somebody, how to use this level of the pyramid. And if you're an aspiring entrepreneur, how to use this level of the pyramid. Because in the end, if you're an employee, say you have no aspirations, you don't want to be a CEO, you don't want to be a business owner, but you want to be the best person in your job that you can possibly be. So it all goes back to the same levels of the pyramid, it's just a little bit smaller. What are you good at? What aren't you good at? Like what do you need to work on? How do you build your knowledge to take your career to the next level? How do you sharpen your skills at your present stage? And then, depending on what you want to do you want that promotion? How do you go about it? So all of these levels can definitely be used because what you want to do for world domination is going to be different than mine. So it can definitely be adhered, it's just on a smaller scale. Success doesn't have a price tag attached to it. Doesn't. You're successful based on how you're happy. Success can mean a wide ranging of things. You could have a little stationery store and you could be as happy as a peach. Or you could be David Rubenstein and be a Goliath. It all starts with you. So it doesn't matter if you're an employee, you want to be happy, you want to create those opportunities for yourself. If you're a manager or whatever, you want to create those opportunities, you want to encourage that growth by creating like what Ford did with this culture of motivating. And to really show the employees, like, listen, you can do it too. You know, everybody has their own little way up.
Are you willing to take a couple questions about your real job?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'm surprised I haven't gotten one yet, so yeah, definitely.
Well, that's why I'm here. I just would be curious for you to talk us through what life is like for a producer on Squawk Box, how you select guests.
Mhm.
You know, the news breaks suddenly and all these people are very busy and have their calendars packed. How do you get them to be there when something's happening in their world? And, you know, just little inside things, like you had Trump Tuesdays for a long time.
Oh, that was
There
it, Trump's
weren't-
my contact. Mhm.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, Trump's my boy. Mhm.
And then he wasn't there anymore.
Yeah.
So what happened, you know, how, did something happen, or did it just wear out its welcome?
No, I
You know,
mean,
just
pretty
any
much.
inside stories. you
Yeah,
can
sure. Well, work-wise, like my moniker is I'm the producer with the $1 trillion Rolodex. Nice.
That's
Which I
what
had
they
a
call
trillion.
you?
That, yes.
Oh, great, that's
And
great.
I'm lucky, like I know Wilbur Ross very well, Richard LaFrac, you know, all these individuals. Like 2 weeks ago, Wilbur called me to let me know that his company was going public last Friday.
Oh.
He's like, do you want me, he's like, if you want me on, let me know. I'm like, okay.
Oh.
But we build that trust. You know, I've known Wilbur, oh goodness, for 14 years. I've been at CNBC 14 years. And the funny thing is, as a TV producer, I'm like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. You can't see me. And for about 5 years, I would deal with Wilbur on the phone. And we just have like a little knack. I'm a people person, as you can tell. And one time, we used to have these like CNBC leadership awards. So we go through phases of that, you know, like with every company, like let's do a leadership award ceremony. And Wilbur was one of he was going to be honored that year. And I actually met him for the first time after 5 years. And Wilbur's small. Wilbur's not that tall. And he was wearing his classic, you know, slippers and his suit and very nice. And he looks at me and goes, "You're a lot taller than you sound." And I was like, thanks. And it's funny because I have people go, "She sounds tall." And I'm like, I go, tall has a sound to it, you know? But I'm lucky that way because we build these rapport and there's like a mutual trust. For example, going back to Wilbur, common courtesy is a must for all of these guys. And when Fox Biz originally started, I don't know how many years ago, we have like, we're first. Either you come on CNBC first or you don't come on at all. We're the 800-pound gorilla, we're #1 in business news. You want to go on the others, fine, it has to be after us. Well, P.S., Wilbur's outside PR guy was going to put him on Fox Business before us. And we canceled him because we had breaking news, and Wilbur knew. So I go to Wilbur, and I go, "Wilbur," I'm like, "You can't, we're going to have to cancel you." He's like, "Oh, you got to talk to my PR guy." So I talked to his PR guy, and I don't normally go through PR, I normally just talk to them directly. So I'm talking to this guy, he doesn't know me from a hole in the wall. He doesn't know I've known Wilbur for 7 years, or 8 years. And the guy actually had the nerve, he was eating a ham sandwich, had me on speakerphone and was chewing and talking at the same time. So I said, I could be a sassafras. And I'm from New York, so I'm even a bigger sassafras. So I kind of used some choice language. And I said, you know, I may not be the bleeping girl that gets you coffee. Swallow your damn sandwich now, or I'm telling Wilbur. And he's like, "Ugh." I'm like, "You think I'm kidding?" I go, "Do you think Wilbur is going to like that you're chewing with your mouth open and you're talking with your mouth full?" I'm like, "What are you, 4?" I'm like, I deserve respect. So he goes, "Yeah, whatever." And I hung up the phone, so I called up Wilbur. And I was like, "Wilbur," I go, "I don't know who that guy thinks he's talking to, but that man," and I knew because he's an older gentleman, so I knew manners were a must. Did I manipulate the situation? Of course I did. I was like, "Wilbur, I don't know what era he grew up in, but he was he was talking with his mouth full of food, and I was on speakerphone. And it was extremely rude." He goes, "He's fired." That man has never worked on Wilbur Ross's account ever again. And it's a testament to, we have a good friendship, we have a mutual respect. It's interesting when you're a journalist, you know all these people like Trump and everything, you can't really be their friend, because I cover you. You know what I mean? Like, you know, you're gonna have the good times and the bad times, we all have it. But they have that mutual respect for you. And I remember when we had to cancel Trump Tuesdays, I had to tell Donald, it wasn't pretty, you know?
Do you get involved in what they're gonna say? Do you kind of
I do.
suggest what
I do.
the topic
I
would be for
pre-interview
their?
them. Mhm.
Okay.
Like even with, like Wilbur last week, like he already told me about when they were going public, but I needed to get the info on the details. Like, okay, why are you doing this? Like seriously, like why? You've been a private company for so long. Why the hell would you want to go public to go through all that SEC mumbo jumbo stuff with
So
the
then you
shareholders?
Do a brief or something for the announcers?
Yeah. I write it up, I write my answers out, I send it off to Joe, Becky, and Andrew, so they know where they can take the discussion. And like the same thing too, where even like stock pickers will get their stock picks, why do you like them? So we get the disclosure as well. But we've also caught people in lies too, like, oh, I didn't say that. And then Joe will go, yeah, well, I have it right here that you said this. And the guy's like, like you can see him like, you need a diaper, thanks for coming on. But it's funny because it's very disarming. Like to go on the Squawk Box set, it's awesome because like you say like this is like a grand Squawk Box table. The cameras are around you. So you don't have a camera literally right in your face. So it's very disarming. So like a lot of times like Ken Langone will come on and guest co-host and then he'll fly off the handle and then he doesn't realize it and you're like, well, you get caught up in the moment. Like you forget that you're on TV, which is good and bad. I mean, it makes for great television. But like today when Bill Ackman was on with Andrew, oh geez. And you were waiting, like last time he got mad because Andrew interrupted him.
I saw.
Boo-hoo, it's TV.
I
Suck
saw
it up.
a week ago when the quirky CEO gave a foot rub to Andrew.
Yes, yes.
And they
We
acknowledged
never-
that had all been pre-planned.
Oh, yeah, no, it's an interesting crowd. Every day is different. We go into our meetings. I book most of the big people on the show, like a lot of the headliners, so I can book out, which is kind of nice. But we're always looking for, like, who's that cool person? Because let's face it, business can be really boring. I mean, really, it can. But we try to sex it up. We try to have fun because it is fun too.
That's what I think you guys do such a
Capitalism
great
rocks,
job.
And, it's what makes the United States special, and when you look at the way that we do business here versus businesses elsewhere, it's different. So we try to bring a different light to it, and also, like, if you're an analyst, like, more CEOs watch Squawk Box than any other show on the network. It makes sense because everyone's working out in the morning. And also, too, if you're in business, you want to be on Squawk Box because the volume is up. You don't want to be on at noon. The volume's down. You're on the trading floor. You can't hear anything. And by the time you want to hear it, it's over. Because, by the time you fumble for the remote control. So we're really lucky because we're positioned at a really great time slot. We air around the world at the same time. We're the #1 show in Singapore. We beat out CNN, Squawk Box. So they simulcast everywhere. So from a CEO standpoint, it's great to come on because you get to hit every market known to man. So, that's pretty much it. But, we have a good time. We're kind of quirky.
Great.
Do you worry about a meltdown with the guy you visited this morning, Rick?
Rick is Rick. He's very passionate. It's hard. I don't think he's going to really melt down. I mean, I think he has melted down already on the air, to be quite honest. But he has a huge following. And when you get out the theatrics and the emotion, if you really listen to what he has to say, it's value added. I think sometimes it's hard because you've got Leisman and Rick. It's so very different. So different in terms of ideology, some of the economy. And then you throw Joe in the mix, and then, oh my God, it's like a recipe for like disaster. All you need is to like throw in climate change, and then it can really blow up. We were joking around a couple of weeks ago. We were having this company on that like measures heart rate, and it was like a wearable, like I'm wearing my Jawbone. and it was a wearable that measures heart rate or something like that. I'm like, why don't we do a climate change segment with Joe, and then we can show the heart rate busting out of his chest while he's interviewing this guy. You know, so it's, so I don't know. I mean, you know, it is television, so you do have the entertainment factor of it, but I think he really truly believes in what he says, and he does strike a chord with a bunch of people.
I have a question back on the pyramid. So there's 7 sections. Is there any one where you see people typically get stuck, the hardest one to sort of work through?
I think a lot of times what they get stuck with is, it's like that, it's between like passion and staying the course. Because that's where the tough gets going. You know, like you need to, sometimes you have to kind of step back, take that breath, and sometimes you might even doubt yourself. You're like, geez Louise, is it worth it? You know, I'm sure we've all asked ourselves that every once in a while. I know I do sometimes. But then you have to step back, no, it is. Because the courage to fail should be insatiable. You want to fail. You want to try. And I think here sometimes is where the people get stuck, because sometimes they lack that passion or that self-confidence. You know, you've built everything up, you got that solid foundation. Getting here, it's going to be a little hard, you know, and I think this is where you kind of see the people saying they're the longest. Sure.
So what are some unique ways you find that people make a point of knowing themselves as leaders, right? I mean, it's, you don't really, as you mentioned, have people on your board that you can confide to wholly on a personal side as well, right? And
Yeah.
but I've heard some interesting ones. But how do they do this? How do they make sure that they're really plugged into themselves? They have good perspective.
Well, I mean, they don't take themselves too seriously.
Mm.
They don't forget where they came from. David Rubenstein had to work his way up. You know, he wasn't handed a silver, you know, he got a silver spoon in his mouth. But even like Richard Lafrac, who was born from the Lafrac dynasty, they own Lafrac City in Queens, and he owns numerous properties around the country. They're humble.
Mm.
You know, they don't take themselves that seriously. I mean, and they're not arrogant. I know so many arrogant people, and when they fail, I kind of like it, because they're jerks. You're not better than me. Just because you might have $100 million in your bank account doesn't make you a better person than me. I went to SUNY Plattsburgh. I went to a state school in New York, and I work with people from Harvard, from Wharton, like all these great schools. And you know what? I'm in the same place as they are. And the big difference between me and them when I graduated college, I didn't have any debt. And I'm just as successful as they are. So I kind of, you know, they're attuned with who they are. They have failed, they've made mistakes, and they acknowledge it, and they move on. So I think you just really have to be honest with yourself, and you got to look at yourself in the mirror and just be like, do I like me? Do people like me? Like, can you honestly say, like, you know, am I likable? Do people, when people see you, do they look on their phone? Oh, there she is. You know, or do people look you in the eye? Do they say hi, and do they mean it? Or, you know, it's also like the nonverbal communications too. Like I go to DC a lot, and there's this one CEO I know that'll remain nameless, and we'll be talking, and he'll look at me in the eyes real quick, but then he'll start looking around me to see if there's anybody better to talk to. I make mental notes of that. Dave Rubenstein, if you don't walk him to the door, he makes a mental note of that. They have a rule at Carlisle: every phone call and every email must be answered, and you have to call the people back every day. You don't have any to-do list. You respond back. You give common courtesy. And I think the central theme with all these people that are so successful is that it's the basics. You know, it all starts with the basic building blocks, and it's being nice.
Any of your, I have a couple questions. On any of your pre-interviews, do you see right away it's not going to go very well?
Oh, yeah.
And you just, so what do you do about that?
Well, first of all, it sounds, this is mean, but if you don't have really good English, you can't come on TV. I had one person from, oh gosh, he was from the Bank of China. Fantastic, like on paper, I was like, yeah! Got him on the phone, I was like, what? Like, I literally could not understand the guy, and what I did was, because I didn't want to be rude, I did the pre-interview. I didn't take any notes because I couldn't understand him. And, so I let him talk, and, it was very nice, and then I said, okay, well, you know what? And I opened it up like, it is news, we're very fluid, sometimes there's breaking news, and we might have to change gears, so sometimes we might have to cancel. So I kind of like opened the door a little bit, that way. And then I got the phone, and then I go on the phone with the PR person saying, I can't put him on, he doesn't speak English. I've also had where some companies don't want to do pre-interviews. I think a pre-interview is the best thing for a CEO. I don't care how important you are, make the 5 minutes and do it. Because it's a test run. And you and I both know, like if you're practicing a speech or you're doing a Q&A, if you practice it, you actually are fine-tuning what you're going to say in real life. So, for instance, many years ago, I was working with one of my PR buddies from Ketchum down in DC. And I've known him for like 10 years. And he's like, I have the new CEO of Cadbury for you. I'm like, yeah. Because cocoa prices were up, and it'd be a great, it's great to talk to him because heck, this is your big commodity, dude. Cocoa prices are up. What are you gonna do about it? But he was on because they had a new gum, a new line of gum coming out from Wrigley's. So I asked my friend Nick, the PR guy, and I said, listen, can I do a pre-interview with him? Well, he's kind of busy. He says he doesn't want to do one. I'm like, Nick, he's got to do one. He's like, I know. He's like, but don't worry, we're going to media train and we'll get him done. And media training is when the PR person sits down and plays TV. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I said, well, can we have him on set? Because the man's never done television before. So now I have to layer on top of it. I'm like, he's like, no, he doesn't want to come out there. It's too far. I'm like, it's a 20-minute drive. Have him go out there. I'm like, he's going to be up. Have him nap in the car, So he's like, no, he wants to do 30 Rock over at NBC in the city. I'm like, all right. So it's 6:40 in the morning, and I'm getting dressed. I have 3 kids, okay? So I'm kind of stopping what I'm doing because I want to see this interview. So here I am, I'm multitasking mama, getting all this stuff done. And this is what I see, like, here's Joe Blow from Cadbury. and Joe's like, Joe Blow, thanks for coming on, before we get to the new line, your new product, let's talk about those cocoa prices. Well, Joe, I'm really excited to be on today to talk about my gum. This gum is the best. The flavor lasts. It lasts for like an hour. Yeah, that's great, Billy Bob. But let's talk about cocoa. Well, and it comes in 15 flavors. And he's going on, and then Becky goes, no, sir, we're going to get to the gum in a minute, but can you just please talk about cocoa prices are up 20% right now. How are you hedging this? What does this mean? Are you going to have to pass it off to the consumer? It comes in sugarless, and it comes in, blah, blah, blah. So then finally, Joe, and everyone knows Joe, very snarky, Bob, I understand you've got this new gum coming out. Let's talk about it. So this guy doesn't understand Joe's making fun of him. You see this wave of relief. He goes, yes. Well, it's called Wrigley blah, blah, blah. And we're just so happy. And Joe's like, yeah, okay, thanks a lot. So during this meltdown, I am like emailing my friend Nick, you suck, he sucks, I'm never dealing with you, screw you, I hope he gets fired, I hope the gum goes bad. And it's like every thought is a new email. Screw you, new email, screw you. So afterwards, the CEO comes out, and he talks to Nick. Now, mind you, Nick was watching the monitor, so he's like shell-shocked, and the guy comes out, he goes, I think I blew it. And so Nick turns and like, you think? So, like 6 months later, I was like speaking at like some speaking play, at another speaking gig, and I was telling this story, and another PR person raised their hand. She's like, we actually use that on YouTube. And we show CEOs, this is what you don't do. This is why you do media training. So it's like stuff like that that's just, it's unbelievable. But it's funny what we get around with. I mean, I tell people to screw off like almost on a daily basis. And yet people still talk to me.
Imagine that.
power of the media.
Yeah.
So if you run into a problem on screen, where someone is just losing control, how do you cut it off?
We literally just cut it off. You could cut the mic. We haven't had people really too psycho on, which is, we're lucky. But a lot of times we'll be like, and sometimes too, we're hitting a heartbreak. A heartbreak is literally, it stops. Like you probably see with the anchors when they go too long in a tease, and all of a sudden they're still talking, and then all of a sudden like Viagra pops up, literally. So that's because we had a heartbreak and they didn't stop talking.
But it is live, it's not
Oh,
5
it's
seconds
live. We are
delay.
live. We
There's
are
no
full
delay
on.
at all.
No, we don't even have a delay, and we had on, who the heck did I have on? Oh, I interviewed Penn Jillette. When we went live from Vegas, I was like, please God, don't let him curse on anything, because I can't do a delay on tape. So every once in a while, when we have people on, we're like, we're live, there is no delay, because you don't want to have like a bomb thrown out there.
Have you been able to get Jeff Bezos?
Jeff doesn't come on that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't need to be quite honest. I mean, Amazon speaks for itself. I would love to just sit with him just to kind of talk about the culture and the growth and things like that, because he really just dramatically changed the market space in terms of how we shop.
Well, now with Hachette and the argument that they're having, he's very topical. And if one side wins and the other one doesn't, that's going to be earth-shattering for the publishing industry. So, the timing is such that it would be really cool to get him on.
Yeah.
Just suggesting that.
We would love to. We put the ask out. It's like, getting the Google guys on. They don't do it. I mean, Zuckerberg, which is interesting, he'll only do the Today Show.
Bezos did wasn't it 60 Minutes, right? When he wanted to announce this drone strategy that they have.
Yeah.
When it's something in it for him, he'll do it, I think. But,
Yeah, but he doesn't do like earnings stuff or anything like that.
right.
But I would love to hear from like McNerney. That'd be great to hear from him. I really hope Alan Mulally does a really good interview, like an exit interview on CNBC. But I don't know, it just depends. I think TV's a good medium in terms of getting your message out and laying out your game plan, so to speak, because I think you owe it to shareholders, to the average Joe that owns the stock, not just, whatever investor that's out there, pension fund. I think it gives greater access to the regular shareholder.
Any other questions?
How was it going through like 2008 and 2009, experiencing all that?
It was insane. I worked in local news, and I'll equate it to this, because normally when you have a hurricane or a bad snowstorm, you know that you're going to go balls to the wall 24 hours a day for a certain period of time. I equate the financial crisis to when I worked in Orlando when we had the big wildfires. And I saw that big wall of flame, and you didn't know when the hell it was going to go out. It was terrifying because you didn't know when it would end. I worked nonstop. I had CEOs calling me. CEOs that I trusted and had on the show going, oh my God, what is going on? Blah, blah, blah. People were freaking out, and I'm like, wait a minute, you're so-and-so. I'm a journalist. I know nothing. I'm just telling you what's going on, It was exciting. I wrote my first book, Thriving in the New Economy. Out of that, it was all about the strategies of how they dealt with it, but more importantly, too, the things that they missed. Like Richard LaFrac told me that his caddy, who had 12 kids, was buying an $800,000 home with a $5,000 down payment. And because he went to Mr. LaFrac, so Mr. LaFrac, can I have $5,000? And he's like,